Well, happy Sunday morning, folks. Good morning. And I hope you're having a good day so far. And look at me, I'm half undressed. Wow, how'd I do that? So that was all for you. So good morning. My brain is not fully on today yet, though I have been awake for about 50 minutes. And I splashed a little water on my face and hair. I did not shower yet today or anything like that, and I may just not. But all depends on how my day goes. So good morning and welcome to another live edition of It's Sunday. And hopefully we can accomplish something good today. Oh, hey, I just noticed my my hat rack is tipped over. Wonder how that happened. Somebody's been in. It's broken is the problem. So I gotta get a new one, or I gotta fix it. And we'll see how many screws the stand will withstand anymore. So good morning. How's that for mundane? Let me just go through who's here because my brain's not on yet. Roger Rabbit, good to see you. And Susie Q, nice to see you this morning. And Leslie, of course. And Teresa, good to see you this morning. And Paula Stucci, how you doing? Good to see you here this morning. It's nice to have you in this morning. And Betsy Richardson, good to see you. And Mike Yehudi, I'm not going to yell yet because the family is not awake. And despite it being 9 o'clock in the morning, they're all still in bed, and sound travels even though I'm in the studio. So I won't yell that this morning, Mike. And Paula Stucci, there you are again. How you doing? And let's see, Steph, good to see you. I don't want to miss anybody that's here so far. Colin Braniff, I'm not sure if I've seen you in here this, Colin, so it's nice to have you. And let's see, Matt Finn, brother Finn, how you doing? And I think that's all I can see so far. So, pardon my lack of presence of functional brain cells this morning. No, I wasn't on a bender last night or anything like that. I'm just not awake this morning, and for some reason, and I've already tried to have conversations with people this morning. That some of them are, there is a misnomer that I will get on Facebook or social media and spend all my time arguing with people. I don't. I've really gotten to the place where it's a waste of time anymore. But when people address me personally about a specific issue, I'll do my best to talk about those things. I still put up posts that will I hope will generate conversation and thinking and stuff like that, because we all want to think. None of us want to stop thinking. And all this stuff that's going on now, it seems to me, and I've tuned out a bit from the news, although I see things. Oh, there, something just popped up and said, I've averaged 9 hours of screen time per day. I don't know why my computer's doing that. It's my browser. Just now it popped up and said, you've averaged 9 hours and 2 minutes per day of screen time. Well, if that's my computer, that's because I work on the computer. So I'm here all the time designing, and I'll listen to radio shows, and I'll listen to music and stuff like that on the computer, and I'll pull up references. Sometimes I'm drawing here. Other times I'm working on designs on the computer for clients. So that's the way it works. Janice, good to see you. Happy Sunday morning to you. And Sean Bowden, nice to see you in here this morning. And Audrey, nice to see you, where it is 7:04 a.m. How dedicated is that? You're up at 7 o'clock. And folks, I got to say something. I appreciate all of you who come in here and listen to these shows, that you listen to my radio show during the week. And I really don't know what the reach of this particular show is. It says right now that 16 people are watching this live, and then I'll come back in a couple of hours and it'll say, 170 people viewed the show. And that's nice. And 170 people were a blip on the radar. Here in America, we have 386 million people. So what's 170 people that watch this show? It's a blip on the radar. Somebody said to me this morning, well, I'll share this. I don't think he's here listening right now, but Jeremy Hansen. We all know Jeremy. He says, sometimes I've had to, if I interpreted him correctly, he sent me a message and he said, I realize how for all the years I have done what I've done, he says, what effect do I really have? And I needed to spend time with my family. And that's a big question. When you do a show like the one I do Monday through Friday, you ask, who am I really affecting? Who am I really reaching? Is it worth my time, or is it me? Is it ego? Do I just like to hear myself talk? And so I talk for an hour a day and make it public. We're not just here, as most of you know, not just a YouTube virtual diary. It's the visual branch. What's the word I'm looking for? The simulcast of the radio show. And we're out there in all other kinds of networks that are broadcasting, just like with Rocky Stucci's Situation Room. We're out there broadcasting to people, and we're hoping that people come and listen. Are we doing that because we've got nothing better to do with our time? No, we're hoping we reach people, and we're hoping that there are some things that we can share that are meaningful to people. And I said to Jeremy this morning, remember, I told you it was Ian Punnett, and as some of you may recognize his name, he used to do the weekend Coast to Coast radio show, and he would host that in place of George Norrie on the weekends. And he was a broadcaster for many years, broadcaster up here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area on a big powerhouse talk station up here. And he did a 3-hour show every day in the mornings. And Ian Punnett used to say at the end of every show, he said, it's said that each one of us influences up to 1,000 people in our lifetimes. How will you be influential today? And he wasn't just talking about people who do radio shows. He was talking about us individuals. As we go through our day-to-day lives, we influence up to 1,000 people in our lifetimes. So I said that to Jeremy. Now, we didn't have a conversation. He had posted that message to me sometime, I think, in the middle of the night. Hey, Norseman, good to see you. And anybody else who may have slipped in while I'm rambling away here. Matt says, you have to remember we take these lessons out to the world, and that affects even more people than the ones who listen directly. That's very true. And so hopefully, I strive to talk about things that are meaningful to us. And I talk about the stuff that's meaningful to me. It's like with anything I've undertaken, I said a very long time ago, the things I do are the things that I enjoy and the things that I like and the things that are fun for me to do. Why would we engage in things that aren't fun? I mean, willfully engage in things that aren't fun for us and that don't excite us in life, other than maybe we have a dreary job that we have to go to because we were obligated to bring money in to keep the roof over our heads and our families' heads and feed them and, hopefully get a few days off here and there. That's why so many people live for the weekend. Oh, the weekend, I don't have to go to work. And for me, I don't really have a day that's like a weekend. Saturday maybe is about the only day I don't broadcast. It's the only day I don't really do a lot of work for clients. I do when I have to. But I live what I love. And, maybe I could be doing something I don't love and make more money. Certainly. There's that factor. But I've always done this. And I said, when I don't love it anymore and it's not fun for me, I'll stop doing it. That's like those of you who are familiar with the Paradigm Symposium. We put on that symposium from 2012 was our first one. So I started work on the first Paradigm Symposium in, I think it was like March of 2011 to prep that thing for the 2012 show. And we ran that for 4 years, 5 if you count the one we had to postpone and move out because it was suffering some financial issues. And we did the last one in 2016 and May, I think it was, of 2016. And so that was the last Paradigm Symposium 4 years ago. I stopped doing it because it stopped being something enjoyable. Yes, the 4 days, 3.5 days of the symposium were really enjoyable. I loved doing that. But the 10 months leading up to it was harrowing. It got to be the point where you spend 10 months trying to raise sponsorships, raise money, make sure everything is put together, and it became not fun to do anymore. And maybe at a day when that becomes a fun thing to try again, we'll do it again. Hey, Kay, TM, I see that you've stepped into the room. Good to see you. And Betsy, I wish I still did it too. But maybe one of these days. I think Rocky and I will have something that we'll probably do. Let's see. Love the way Leslie says that Ian Punnett ended his show. Something like, work like you don't need the money, love like you've never been hurt, dance like nobody's watching, right? That old, I don't know what you call that. Cliche. It's not a cliche. It's too long. But yeah, there is that as well. And so life, I have said, is meant to be an adventure. It's meant to be something that is fun to do. Life isn't supposed to be dreary. Life is supposed to be filled with the things that make you go, the things that excite you, the things that you get up in the morning, and like I've said, you look in the mirror and you look at yourself and say, damn, I'm glad to be alive today. What a fun day this is going to be. And I got a long time ago into saying to people, whether it's clients and business, or if I'm talking to somebody on the phone, or I always tell them when I say goodbye, I say, okay, have a fun day, because life is meant to be fun and enjoyable. And sometimes there are things that aren't enjoyable about life. There are things that we have to do. There are obligations we have to fulfill. There are events that take place that aren't fun, that we have to be part of sometimes. But overall, my philosophy is one of life as an adventure, and you seek it out and you do it. So 20 years from now, you don't look back and say, I wish I'd done that thing. And of course, all of those fun and exciting things are wrapped up in our obligations and our responsibilities that we have. If you have a spouse or a partner, or you have children and a family, you're bound by those obligations. Those become things. But why did you become a spouse? Why did you become somebody with a family? It's because you wanted to, you enjoyed it, was something you wanted. And then later down the road, when you want to do something, if I didn't have a family, I could be doing the fun things I want to do. Look at the green grass over the side, the other side of the fence over there in that pasture. I should be doing that thing. And do we have regrets sometimes? Yeah, but don't regret the things you enter into happily and with purpose and seeking out the adventure and the love of it. Do I sometimes think, oh, it would be so nice to be a single guy and not attached to my family and not have obligations and go do the things I want to do? I can tell you, I probably wouldn't be here right now. I would probably, a long time ago, 5 years, 6 years ago, I'd have probably moved to Luxor, Egypt. I might be living there. There were those possibilities that were out there. I sometimes look at my life and say, what if I were still in the military? What if I had stayed in the military? As most of you know, I had a medical discharge because I broke a bone in my lower back in 1984 is when that happened. And I think, and I was given a choice, by the way. It was mandatory. They were releasing me from military service because of that bone in my back. And I was given the opportunity, however, that if I wanted to, I could stay in. And they would promote me to first lieutenant, and I could go work in the advertising department in Washington, D.C. They found out I was an illustrator and designer. This is even, 1984. This is way back. I was a 25-year-old kid. And so they made me that offer. And in the meantime, in the few weeks that had passed from the point they found out I had been injured to the point where they actually took almost a month to process me out, I had called home and called some people I knew, and I had lined up a job as an art director with a small ad agency and a small graphics house and ad agency consisting of about 6 people. And I had done some work for the owner of this company, and he made me an offer to be his art director about a week after I had taken the oath to go into the United States Marine Corps. And I said, dude, I can't take the offer. I took an oath, and I'm going in and within a month. And so in that month I was in, he had hired somebody else that didn't work out for him and let them go. And so I called him up and I said, hey, I'm coming home. Here's what happened. I said, would you have need of my services at all? And he says, as a matter of fact, I would. And he hired me on the phone call. And so by the time I had a week of downtime and I started my job there. So, but I have sometimes thought, the point I'm making with this story is I thought, what if I had taken the DC job? What if I had stayed in the Marine Corps? What if I had become an officer and started working in the advertising department? Non-combatant role. What if I had stuck that out for 20 plus years? I'd be retired from the Marine Corps already with a pension. Who would I have met and married along the way? Would I have children? Would I have seen the world? Would I have done other things? And so it's always interesting when you look back and say, what if I had made this choice instead of that choice? But I made the choices I made. And because I did, I'm married to the woman I'm married to today. I have the children I have today. I had none of my 6 children at that point in my life. That was, how long ago was that? 1984. You're talking almost 30 years ago. No. You're talking almost 30. I can't do math. My brain's addled on the deep inside this morning. So you get it. 1984 to present is what? 36 years. So I didn't have kids. My oldest kids are 28. So 28 and a half. So you look at that and you look at the paths you've chosen to take and the directions you've gone in life. Where would you be if you had think back to decisive moments. A decisive moment for me was that moment I decided to not stay in the Marine Corps, not take the offer to go to Washington, D.C. in their advertising department. That was the choice at the time, and I chose to come back home and take on an art director role with a company. And that, of course, laid the path for most of my career. I was in advertising the rest of my life. And so you look at those things and you say, what are the choices I make that make me happy about my life at the moment I make them? Can I go back and look at a decision I made and say, if I had made a different choice, I would be a happier person? I would be somebody who regrets the choices I've made in life. And, there are times where we have those defining moments of our life where we can say, I've made a lot of mistakes and I got to make changes. And hopefully, when we have those moments of enlightenment that come on us, we haven't wasted so much of our lives doing something we shouldn't be doing, or things that we're going to regret, that we have missed out on being happy. And why aren't we happy? Why do we overall have people that aren't happy? I don't know if she's listening at all this morning, but a brief discussion over the week with my son's girlfriend. My son is, of course, like me, he's white. His girlfriend is black. They live in North Carolina. And he went down to live with my daughters a couple of years ago. And so we've had a conversation going about what's going on in the country right now. And seeking happiness, seeking fulfillment. Here is somebody who's not even 20 years old yet, that believes she has defined what is good for her to do, how it's good for her to act, and so on. And I say, look, go according to your conscience and what you believe in, but be informed before you do that. Most young people don't like to get themselves too informed before they act emotionally. And so how does that tie in with being happy? Pursue your happiness, pursue your bliss. As Joseph Campbell once said, pursue your bliss. And just as an aside, I was asked to speak, be the keynote speaker at a baccalaureate for a small university up here, and years ago, 10 years ago. And I spoke about pursuing your bliss. And so I look at the girlfriend of my 19-year-old son, and I say, pursue your bliss, but make sure you know what you believe, and don't follow the crowd. We were talking about this whole thing, and I said race issues, and she is all pretty much bound up in that race is the problem with the police department. And I said, well, police departments aren't comprised of white people only. And I said, and deaths at the hand of the police have been many, but I said they haven't all been black people. I said the statistics will tell you, if you look at the Department of Justice statistics, that more than twice the number of white people have been killed at the hands of police. I said, that's not a racial issue. Twice the number of whites over the number of blacks. But for blacks, it's a racial issue. I look at, if you take another step way out from all of this, and you look at the Jews, if you will. How many Jewish mobs have burned down neighborhoods over the injustices that the Jews have faced? Down through the centuries, not just at the founding of this nation, as black slavery was. How am I trying to say this? Black slavery started here in 1619. They say was when it first came to the Americas. Now, it wasn't the United States, of course, for another 100 and what would that be? Another 160 years before it became the United States. It was a British colony before that. So from the late 1700s, it took about 90 years for this nation, the United States, to abolish slavery, because they found it was an inconsistency with what the Constitution said. And we abolished it. 90 years, or remember Abraham Lincoln's speech 77 years ago? So 87 years earlier, was the founding of the nation when he gave the Gettysburg Address. And in his lifetime, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, and we abolished slavery in this country. We reunited after the Civil War, and that became the policy of this country. This country has evolved and it has grown. People like to point out all the bad blots about this country and our bad history, yet they forget that we are also one of the best places on earth to be, that this country is all about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And where some people can look back and criticize, that has been the path that this country has taken. Now, my son brought up this morning that there is corruption. Of course there's corruption. There's always corruption when it comes to people. There's always somebody that wants to be in power. And for those of you who were actually able to hear the show on Friday, we'll get into that in a minute. I wanted to talk about that. Keep in mind that there is the good narrative and there is the evil narrative, the good guys and the bad guys. And even when the good wins out and defeats the evil empire or the tyrannical government or the bad king or the bad guy that's in charge, and they wipe out that form of government and start their own, what happens down the road? Even the good guys that take on power have to start finding ways to perpetuate that goodness. And so laws get imposed, rules, regulations. Oh, you got to subdue the uprisings of the bad guys again. And you can watch this in the course of our own history. And as you do that, sometimes the good guys become, and that's why I played that song, by the way, on Friday night. Here's the new boss, just the same as the old boss. We don't get fooled again. And on that point about my show on Friday, I used that song from The Who. I played that in the break. Just a 3-minute segment of an 8.5-minute song. And I played that segment, and for the first time ever, now, when I play a song that's a copyrighted song on YouTube, I make the choice. Do I want this to be monetized or not? Now, my YouTube channel is not monetized. But if I use a song, they'll send me an email message saying, you've got content that's copyrighted. We're not going to shut you down or anything. You're okay. Just know that we can't monetize your video. Okay, that's fine. Well, this is the first time ever in all the time I've been using YouTube, and for at least 200 episodes of the Intrepid radio program, where I have used a song from YouTube where they have blocked my entire content because there is a song in the middle. And that's what happened on Friday, and I didn't realize they were blocking it, the entire program, this time out. And so, and I just got an announcement, by the way, in my YouTube that says they have started a new policy that they are going to govern content a little tighter, a little stricter, offensive content or inappropriate content or something like that. And I want to ask the question, who is the arbiter of what is and is not appropriate content? Who makes that decision? What is their political point of view? What is their psychological point of view? Who makes that decision for YouTube? And so I don't think I've said anything too offensive on this show ever, but it was apparently a line I crossed, some new line, some new policy. So I'm not going to play anybody else's songs anymore. And that's just fine. I use royalty-free content. And that's fine too. Or I got to get permissions to use songs. Do you remember the older shows I did? Remember the opening had the song Ghost Dance by Bill. Why am I skip? This is the way my brain's working this morning. Bill Miller, Native American songwriter and singer, musician. And he's now Grammy Award winning, and he's been around for quite a while. But 10 years ago, I wrote him personally and asked if I could use his song Ghost Dance in the opening of my radio show that I was doing 10 years ago. And he said, yeah, man, go right ahead. And I said, fantastic. And I always told, the song that you heard was Bill Miller, and that's that Ghost Dance song. And now every time, even last week, somebody watching or listening to one of my programs last summer on Native American issues and Wounded Knee and so on, I keep getting tagged on those shows for copyright violation of his song. And I've written YouTube at least a dozen times. I've responded to those and disputed it and said I was given permission by Bill Miller, the artist. And here is the email. Here's a copy of it. If you need to pursue this further, let me know. And I never hear anything back. I just get another hit on it down the road. And a dozen times. And the last time I wrote to YouTube about this a couple of weeks ago, I said, do you guys cross-reference any of the communications you have with me? I said, how many times do I have to tell you the same thing over again? And so, there's that. So maybe I need to go look at what's being said here, because I just saw Paul Astucci. How you doing? Said the type of person that George was in life is a separate issue. Does that make his murder any less horrible? I don't even have to jump into the conversation to know what you're talking about, Paula. No, I don't think it makes his murder any less horrible. I was listening to Candice Owen, young black woman in politics. We all know most of us, I think, know who Candice Owen is. And she brought up this very issue. She said she brought up George Floyd's record and said this is what he had been arrested for 6-7 times. Was it 6 times or 7 times he's been in prison over different issues? And she said, now look, and this is, I think, the point that needs to be made here too. She said, I am not saying that what happened to George Floyd wasn't despicable. And she several times through her little presentation she made online said that it's a despicable thing that happened to him. It's horrible. And there is a problem when people get killed like this. And we mourn the death of anybody who gets killed this way. She said, however, she said she stood against the black community, upholding George Floyd as some kind of person who needs to be memorialized. Because she said, we have taken and elevated a lifetime small career criminal to the status of some kind of local hero because a bad cop killed him. And she said, let's get to the core of the issue. Why are people protesting over the killing of a criminal? They're protesting the killing, and not the life of George Floyd. But then again, I see things like the funeral of George Floyd. The governor of the state of Minnesota attended the funeral of George Floyd. Now, perhaps that was a political move, but hear me out on this. This is the same governor who a few weeks earlier closed down all of Minnesota, does not want to reopen Minnesota, disallows gatherings in churches because of the coronavirus, has strict regulations he's trying to impose and mandate that say there cannot be gatherings of more than 6 people. All this for the protection of people, yet he's okay attending the funeral of George Floyd. When how many people lost loved ones due to the coronavirus that could not attend the funerals of loved ones who died? Regular, normal citizens of the state that could not attend funerals, could not attend weddings, all of these different things that happen, yet the governor has opened up. It's okay to attend the funeral of George Floyd, a lifetime criminal who happened to have been killed by one of our police officers. So it's amazing to me when politics and your face in politics supersedes what you said was the right thing to do. Oh, now this is the new right thing to do because it behooves you political. You better damn well show up at that funeral because, oh, it's a political issue now. And that kind of pisses me off a little bit. I look at all the riots. I look at Black Lives Matter. And I say, if Black lives really do matter to Black Lives Matters, why aren't they telling people to stay home? There's a virus. Suddenly, what, the virus is non-existent now? Now, of course, I have my stance on all this sequestration stuff and stay-at-home orders and things like that and states being shut down. I've got my own opinion about that, and I've expressed it before. But I'm talking about as it exists now. Suddenly, it's okay to have thousands of people out all together protesting something. So the protest, the thing that is a manufactured thing, if you will, a protest is something we choose to do. It's not a natural event. So suddenly, because people want to protest something, and it's a burgeoning race war or an ongoing one, all of a sudden it's okay to be out in thousands with each other. And it's a good and right thing to do. Down with the police and all of this bullshit that goes along with it. So protest the life of the loss of life. Protest the police all you want. And without breaking it all down again, for the sake of this conversation, why is it suddenly okay to no longer have to abide by the pandemic orders? Is it that they really aren't real? It's not a real thing we had to do? And so I have an issue with that. I have an issue with the hypocrisy. I have an issue with, I do take issue with the protesters. I stand with them from this point. It's like this. Do you remember when Obama was president? Maybe many of you weren't listening to my radio show back then. And I've repeated it many times because people accuse, well, you always criticized Obama. I said, I did not criticize the man. I criticized his policies. So when Obama was president, I disagreed with his political agenda. I disagreed with his political ideology. And I made that very vocal. But at the same time, and I bring this up as a point about those who hate Trump and have to deal with Trump the way they do. Everything he says is, there's hatred for Trump out there. We've somehow made it okay to hate people in office. But when Obama was president, I disagreed with just about everything he did. But I also said in public, I will support him as my president. He is still my president because this is my country. Now, if I want to say Obama's not my president, well, what country am I a citizen of? And so I said, this is my country. And I may have a president in office that I don't like and disagree with, but he's still my president. And I will defend the fact that I will defend the office and the man who sits in it, whether I agree with the man or not, whether I like the man or not. And so that was my take on that. Now, the same thing, you take that same type of thinking and bring it up into all this stuff that's going on now, the riots and the protesting and over the death of George Floyd. And I say, I don't necessarily agree with the protesters on every point. I don't agree that there is a race problem in this country. I don't believe George Floyd was killed because he was black. And so I disagree with that point. However, I agree with and support the fact that the protesters have a right to do what they're doing. You have a right. A constitutional right is protected for free speech, for protestation, for demonstration. Now, should there be some laws that govern that? Yeah, of course there should be. You can't walk out with a crowd onto onto a freeway and block traffic. That's where protesting becomes wrong. You can't do that. Protest. Stand on the bridge overhead. Stand on the sides of the streets. Things like that. What about, look at the other side of that story. The whole abortion issue. Can protesters who say that abortion is wrong block the doorways to abortion clinics? No, it's illegal. They have to, and they've made laws. You've got to protest at least, 30 or 40 feet away from the front door. They can't block people from going in. So protesting, while it is a constitutional right, it has its limitations. There are things you can't do. And so you may agree or disagree with any given protest that's out there. There are rules to protesting. Thomas Jefferson said way back 250 years ago, liberty too must be limited in order to be possessed. We have the right to protest, but there are rules we have to abide by in order to do that. Even in a free society, you cannot. Why do they say don't block traffic? Because it has the potential of harming human life and causing damage. Why do they say you can't block the doorway? You can't physically stop somebody? Because human life is, and choices of cognitive people exercising their rights cannot be hindered. You can protest. You can hold up your signs. You can yell things. You cannot block people from doing things. Why? Because then you're violating their right to free expression, no matter what the issue is or what side of the issue you're on. So there is a lack of common sense application. Common sense says you can protest anything you want. Common sense and rules and regulations also tell you there are rules and regulations you have to abide by. And if you violate those, suddenly you are damaging your protest. You're damaging your cause. You will be limiting yourself from your own free speech if you violate the rules about using it. It's like the old cliche, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, unless there's fire, maybe. But that is something that is frowned upon, that's rules are made against. You can't use your free speech to create havoc. Now, this goes then to the difference between protesting and rioting. You might say, as Martin Luther King said, and everybody quotes, that the riot is the language of the unheard. Yeah, we get that. I understand that. And I agree with that. But this is the difference between protesting and rioting. If there is rioting, that's the outcome of the people who say they are unheard, and they're going to go start breaking things. I get that. However, Martin Luther King Jr. also said, which people forget was in the same speech, where he said the language of the unheard is rioting. He also said rioting destroys society, and he stood against it. He said, I understand. So in essence, he's saying, I understand where it comes from and why people do it, but that does not make it right. The language of the unheard is to riot. That doesn't make it right, because it destroys society. And so these are things I've been talking about for 2 weeks now. When you have a riot, you have an uncontrolled mass of people who wish to show their support of a cause, or their angst about a cause, or their anger about an injustice by hurting people. What justice is served by committing an injustice? This is why people are allowed to protest in this country, and it's your right to express your free speech, but you are not allowed to do things that could harm other people, because other people have their personal rights. How difficult is that to understand? Not at all. Which tells me there's a bunch of foolish ignoramuses out there who can't add 1 and 1 to make 2. You don't destroy the homes of your neighbors to protest the killing of a man by the police. This is where, and I hear it all the time, they talk about the rioters and they're calling them protesters. They talk about the protesters and they're calling them rioters. Well, rioters has almost gone out of the lexicon of the news media. It's the protesters. The protesters got rubber bullets shot at them. The protesters were tear gassed and blah, blah, blah. There is a line of distinction that is once again being blurred between protest and riot. Who's blurring that? The people who want to push the cause, the people with a political dog in the fight. And what happens when you've got the police who are there to protect and serve, to protect the communities from being burned down, when that line is being blurred between protester and rioter? Who are they going to stop? If they're trying to protect, if you've got 1,000 people marching toward the downtown business district, how are the police supposed to know who is going to torch a building? So they close it off. And they say, no, nobody gets to come in after this point in the day. There's a curfew now. And it's to protect the businesses of the people who aren't involved in this fight. So there have to be rules by which you govern yourself. And there has to be rules by which a country governs itself, or a county, or a state, or a city. There are rules by which you must abide in order you can get your message. How many people are not aware of what the message of the protesters actually is? So why is the rioting necessary? Why did the riots start? So there is justice against the cop who killed the black guy? You know what? That doesn't happen in 2 days. What did they want him to be lynched? Would that have been the justice they sought? Or does even a guy who kills somebody, a cop in an officious uniform and position, who kills somebody by his actions, does he deserve the same rights as a citizen of this country that everybody else deserves? If somebody happened to see you commit a crime, do you still have a right to be innocent until proven guilty? That is the standard by which our system of jurisprudence operates. And if it does not operate for this cop, it doesn't operate for anyone. So there is a process, a system that has to be entered into. So the cop was arrested, 3 days, or was it a whole 4 days after the death of George Floyd? Oh my God, it took 4 days. There wasn't a 2-week investigation. There are some cases where people don't get arrested for over a year until the investigation is carried out. This cop got arrested in 4 days, yet we still had the burnings and the rioting taking place. What are we supposed to get from that? Because I will tell you one thing. While I may not agree 100% with every tenet of Black Lives Matter and the protests that are going on, I agreed with the basic premise. There was an injustice and this cop needed to have justice applied. Well, what is justice? Well, number one, getting arrested was the first thing. They arrested him. Now, guess what? Now he's in jail. Now he has to go to trial. That is the process of justice. So the protest worked, as far as I was concerned. So why was there the rioting? Why was there the burning of people's businesses? Why were neighbors in that community hurt? We're not talking about big box corporations. Yeah, they raided Target. And what was the auto parts store? A chain. How many small businesses out of the 170 businesses affected in the Lake Street District, how many of those businesses were big box corporations? How many of them were people that lived in those communities? How many of them were minority businesses? We've seen the videos. Yeah, why is the Durwood just said, I don't understand why the black community is allowing Antifa into the protests. I tell them to go home and watch Stranger Things in their mom's basement, which is what they do anyway. And I happen to like the fact that the president, by executive order, made Antifa a terrorist organization. Why? As soon as you start hurting people and doing damage to property, you lose your status as somebody who gets the right to freely express themselves. If you express yourself by beating reporters, this is what happened a year ago with Antifa. And I also say this, if your cause is so great and so mighty and so powerful and right and good, why are you covering your face? Show me your face. Put your face behind your convictions. When you have to attack somebody from anonymity, how powerful are your convictions? That's terrorism. You tell me Antifa doesn't try to terrorize people into doing what they think should or should not be done. So Antifa is now a terrorist organization in this country, and they should be treated like terrorists. I have had my obvious lapses on this and justifications through history. I was always somebody who supported the Irish. Did I support Sinn Féin? Did I support the IRA? I understood their cause. Did I sanction personally? Not that they needed my sanctioning, but did I sanction the actions? No, I think there were some unconscionable actions. But I stood for their right to exist, their right to express themselves, their right to protest. Different country, different set of rules, different constitutional laws. I stood with the people who were feeling oppressed and needed a voice. I did not stand for the killing of people, the bombing of innocents. That's where the IRA lost me. Not their cause, not their voice, but some of the actions of some of their members. How do you deal with that when you see a cause that you believe is worthy and good and true at its core, and yet those people then start hailing to atrocity, to damage, to death, to murder, to injury of people's property? What do you do then? What happened in the American Civil War? You had states that seceded from the Union. They declared war. That was a civil war. They went to war with each other. Were there atrocities committed? Yeah. But that's the option too. If you want to take up arms against your government and declare a civil war or secede from the Union, you've entered into a whole nother picture. But are you prepared to do that if you take that stance? I'm sorry, and I'm not watching the chat room. I get glances of things that are being said over there, and maybe I should address some of what you're saying here. And I hope I didn't lose some of you along the way. I hope you're still here. You don't have to agree with me, but come on in and converse about it a bit. I don't think Trump has done a good job in handling all the protests, said Andre. Well, neither do I. I'm not watching very closely what Trump is doing about handling all the protests. How should he handle them is the question. I hear lots of criticism. This isn't directed at you, Audrey, for saying that, but I've heard this before, and I like to say to people, I like to ask them, well, what would you do if you were in his position? It's the same criticism I heard about his handling of the coronavirus. Well, what would you have done? There's the question I ask people. How would you have handled this? Would you have locked down? Would you have declared martial law, therefore making the Constitution temporarily void when you have martial law? Would you have done that? Is that how you handle this? Would you have made it a huge public thing, more so than it is already? How do you handle what's going on with the protesters? And are we talking about protesters, or are we talking about the rioters? Are we blurring the lines between the protests and the riots? They are two distinctly different animals. One is constitutionally protected. The other is damaging to other people, therefore illegal. When did it become legal to burn somebody's business down because you're angsty about your oppression? And is it even those people that are doing it? I've heard a lot of Black Lives Matter people and a lot of people that are the protesters now that are telling Antifa to back the hell off. Don't set your neighbors' buildings on fire. Why are there people coming in from out of town joining? What would I do as president? I don't know. What is the limits of my power as the president of the United States? I'm an elected official, not an emperor, not a king. What would I do? I would do what Trump has done. I would have declared Antifa a terrorist organization, but not out of this incident. That would have happened a long time ago. And of course, it's presidential fiat right now. It's an executive order. That may not stand up to Congress. Could be legislation that voids that. Will Congress vote to turn down the executive order declaring Antifa terrorists? They can. They can void the president's executive order. Will they? And then the question will be, who's doing what for the sake of politics? Oh, I have to stand with the rioters because, well, that's Black America, and I have 28% blacks in my districts, so therefore, is that the way these decisions are arrived on? Who's going to vote for you next? Or do you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do? That's the question I have. Hey, Jim Dawson, I just saw that you came in. Good to see you. Sorry, I'm in the thick of just talking about something we've all talked about this last week. So, yeah, Congress does need to support Trump, Teresa, on this. And that should prove who the Congress is. Right now, there's a big political game being played, folks, if you don't know this already. Back before the rioting started and the death of George Floyd, what did we have? The coronavirus, the reopening of the country, which, by the way, people who've asked me this question before that are from outside our country, we have 50 states. They're independent states. You see, not every state has gone along with reopening, and they have the right to do that. They're independent states. The states just cannot violate the federal constitution, but we are still independent states. But if you notice, there has been a political game being played. The coronavirus is real. It's killed people. The coronavirus is also something that has been a political tool of one narrative, and that is keeping the states closed, push the closure of the economy, push sequestration as long as you can up to the national elections in November of this year. Sap as much of that. Look at who is opposing reopening the country and who is for it. Look at who is for keeping the coronavirus a thing that keeps us in our homes and away from work and getting the economy rolling again. Look at who is for that and look at who is against that. And you'll see who is playing the political game. There is a game that's being played that says the longer we keep our country shut down, the more it will adversely affect the sitting president. Because there are two things that dictate who usually gets elected into office. That's the state of the economy is one of them. What was the second one? I know it's the state of the economy. I said the two things before I even had them in my mind because I know there's two things that govern the reelectability or electability of any president. Well, let's just stick with the one thing because I'm not thinking of the second. But it's the state of the economy. And if the economy can be kept down because we've shut down the economy and shut down the country because of the coronavirus and a pandemic, then let's push that out as long as we can toward the election so the economy doesn't have a chance to recover. This is the political game that's being played by politicians. It's not a conspiracy theory. It is a fact. This is how the political game is played. Look now with the rioting. Look who's defending the rioting and who is against it. Look who is trying to find solutions and who is kindling the fire beneath it. And you will see the political game that is being played that will hopefully have an effect on the presidential elections in November. When you can't win by the power of your good message, you have to play the political game to try to convince people that you're better than the other guy because of the conditions, because of whatever. Right now, the weakest candidate I cannot believe that anybody would look to poor Joe Biden as a candidate for president. The man, I'm not saying this from a political point of view. Democrats, throw up a strong candidate if you want to win the election. Don't try to manipulate everything around Joe Biden, who shouldn't be running for president. That poor guy is not in a mental state to run for president. You think the world is laughing at Trump? I think the world is laughing at the fact that we're putting up somebody who's falling into his dotage, who is slipping a bit mentally. I don't want a president that's even starting to slip a bit. I want a president who knows what the hell he's doing with deliberation. I feel bad for Joe Biden. I believe he was pushed into this. And I believe he probably, in his debilitated mental state, probably believes I'd be an okay president. But he can't remember what the hell he ate for lunch. I feel bad for him, and I've said this before. I think when Joe Biden's oldest son died a few years ago, that the fire went out of his belly. He was vice president at the time. I think he just wanted to be done. Wanted to go home, wanted to retire. I put in my 40 years in government. I'm going to go retire. And then he gets dragged into this. And obviously somebody convinced him it was a good thing for him to do. Watch whoever the vice presidential candidate pick will be for Joe Biden. Because if Joe Biden gets elected into office, you're going to see a president who very soon is either declared unfit and the vice president takes over gracefully. You're going to see this happen. Mark my words. But I don't think he's going to be elected. But you have to take a step further back and say, what political party would put somebody up as the main candidate against the guy that they want out of office? They put in somebody who is doddering, who is, age isn't a big deal. Trump's only a couple of years behind him. I don't see much slippage in Trump mentally. It's a personal genetic predisposition. But I see somebody like a Joe Biden. How could they possibly run him for president? That alone, you think, if you don't believe in conspiracy theories, start believing something's going on behind that. And if you're going to vote for Joe Biden simply because you don't like Donald Trump, you're an idiot. Vote for somebody else. Well, then we'll lose the election. Look at it this way. I think Trump is already the winner. I think he's going to win re-election. Believe it or not, for all the stuff that's going on, take a look at what's going on. Don't vote for Joe Biden just because. Leave the man alone. Let him go home. Let him retire. They could put Klobuchar on the seat. Yeah, Teresa. What was wrong with Tulsi Gabbard? She was a fantastic candidate on the Democrat side. Oh, she's too conservative in some of her things, so they couldn't have her. But she was a fantastic female candidate. Hey, Darth, how you doing? Darth, how's it hanging? That always reminds me of, we talked about that on Rocky's show. Remember Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure? Or I think it was the second movie when they encountered death. And death is there in all his robes and he's menacing and I am death. You know, hey, death, how's it hanging? But what makes Tulsi Gabbard controversial, Teresa? She was controversial only because she wasn't following the pure Democrat leftist line. What's controversial about her? She's a woman. She's active military. She has served her country. She has some great ideas. She's too far right. That's it. She's too far right to be a Democrat. So the Democrats couldn't put her up. Isn't it time, as Hillary Clinton once said, to have a woman in office? Yeah, as long as it was her. What if the Democrats ran a Tulsi Gabbard? What if they got a Democrat in office that was a woman? Boom, you've accomplished your goal, if that's all you're after. I don't think it's time for a woman to be in office. I don't think it's time for a man to be in office. It's time for whoever brings the best to the table to be in office. Man or woman. If the younger generation had their way nowadays, they would change the constitutional rule that says a president has to be 38, or was it 38 or 39 years old to be qualified to be the president of the United States, to run for president. They'd lower that to 18, I'm sure. Thank God the founders were smart enough to know that you had to be at least in your late 30s to figure things out. I don't know where I'm going to go with this now. I think I haven't exhausted what I have to say about things. But folks, this is why, let's take everything we've been talking about, and I'm going to push this out over here. See, this is why I talked about what I talked about on Friday night on the show, the one that was blocked. It wasn't blocked for my political points of view or anything like that. It was blocked because there's some new rule apparently about using songs. And so because of that 3-minute segment, I extended the segment, the middle segment, by the way, the break. I extended that in the show to play the segment of the song I wanted to play. And there's a 3-minute segment of an 8.5-minute song from The Who old song, We Don't Get Fooled Again. Sorry, my phone is beeping at me. I've got to... oh, you know what? There's something I did want to announce here. And I think that's one of the things that just came up in here. Let me look it up. I saw the message, the alert come up there. Ruben Fasthorse. You guys remember Ruben Fasthorse? He has a noon, which would be 11 a.m. here, noon Eastern. He's got a Zoom meeting that's going on. 12 o'clock Eastern, noon Eastern, where he does Native American language and some of the things that he talks about. That was what was beeping in here on my phone and just came up there. So in about an hour, if we're not doing anything as a family, I think my family's all going up to, Rainey's taking the kids up, but to visit her grandma, and I'm not going. But so at noon, and I can put this out there for you guys if you want to join his Zoom. It's on a message on my phone right now. So Ruben Fasthorse, if you want to hear more of Ruben Fasthorse, if you're on Facebook and you friended him after he was on the show with Rocky and I, go check in with him and find out how you can join this Zoom group. It's the way he's keeping his teaching alive while the university is shut down. And so I just gave him a thumbs up there because I'm talking here. So go check him out, Ruben Fasthorse, and I'll see if I can post something about it. Hi, baby. Come here. What are you doing? Here's my little girl.
I was playing the Pepsi.
Hi.
Playing the Pepsi.
Do you remember that you woke up at about 5 o'clock this morning and you asked me can we go downstairs, you said? You remember that? I don't think you do. I think you were half asleep. All right, everybody. That's Ellery. Are you guys going to Grandma's today? Is Mom up?
Yes, Mom's up.
Okay. I'll be a little while yet, and then I'll come out. I love you too. That's fine. That's my youngest. That's Ellery. She apparently just got up. So, pushing all this stuff aside we've been talking about, this is why I talked about what I talked about on Friday. And by the way, I reloaded that show. I went in and I pulled the Who song out, and I just put in my royalty-free music in the break. So I reloaded it. So you're going to see it's up there twice. And as of this morning, I saw almost 40 people, I think, watched the new one, which just got put up last night. So you can go over to the main channel and you can see that without hinder. I think you can see the other now. It's just they blocked out the song and it blotted out about a minute of my talking toward the break in order to mute the song. And you still hear a part of the song at the end of the break. They didn't quite align it perfectly. So, yeah, that's my little cutie, Ellery. So, you can go over and you can watch either version now. And you can watch the version that wasn't blocked and the version that was. It's got a big mute section in the middle. That's 3.5 minutes long. So I know some people watched that and they said, well, they turned it off when it went mute, not realizing that the rest of the show was okay at the other, on the back end, the other half of the show. So, there you go. So the reason that's what I was on, pushing all this aside. That's why I talked about what I talked about on Friday, narrative, and we're going to talk about it a little bit tomorrow night at 9 p.m. on the show. What's the narrative that you follow? There's a narrative beneath everything. There is a narrative beneath the protesters. There is a narrative beneath the rioters. There's a narrative between those who oppose that or have a different point of view. There is a narrative beneath opposing President Trump. There is a narrative beneath supporting him. There's a narrative beneath conservative, beneath liberal. There's always a narrative. And we say, many times I've said, you know why they don't allow that? Because it goes against the narrative. There's a narrative overall, a general narrative of the mainstream media. Some people, I had a friend say, oh, whenever I hear the word mainstream, I turn it off. Well, why? There is a mainstream. There is a mainstream train of thought. And those who deny that there's a mainstream are usually the ones that are part of it, because that supports their narrative. And so there is a narrative. And the big question I asked in the show on Friday, and if you haven't heard it or were a little thrown off by the whole thing, you can go watch the video about the peace narrative. What is your narrative? When I have said on my show for months, separate yourself out, wake up. Don't be woke. Woke is stupid. Woke is a narrative. But be awake. Be aware that you are awake. Be in the now. And that being awake doesn't put you inside any political agenda. It means that you are awake and you're in the here and the now, in the moment, and you operate from that point of view. So I think when you are awake, you start to realize that the greater narrative should be a peace narrative. What we pursue transcends the argument from either side. The narrative should be one of seeking peace, of seeking wholeness, of seeking betterment, of wellness, not just for personal health and safety, personal state of mind, but collective. If you got more people doing that as a narrative, all of this stuff is going to fall into place the way it's supposed to. Yeah, there's going to be battles, but right now, you look at us right now, we are all locked in a war narrative. We have to fight the bad guys. And either narrative on opposite end of the spectrum views the other guy as the bad guy, or the other narrative is the bad narrative. And so there's always warring. We have to replace, fight against, and so on. And then what happens if you win that war? Then you're in charge and you have to replace. And then the other narrative starts up again. Now you're the bad guy. And so on. What do you do with all of that? You push it aside and say, I pursue a peace narrative. And that's a paradigm that's hard to follow. You can criticize, you can fight against the system, you can do whatever you want, but are you pursuing a peace narrative? That's what that show is all about. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to it, go listen to that. Tomorrow night, I'm going to pick up that topic again. So, seeking unity, says Leslie. Yep. Brad Hart, how you doing, brother? I don't know if you've been here the whole time. Had a lengthy conversation that I'm wrapping down. Yeah, get our heads out of the sand. As in a piece of chocolate, says Steph. Of course you would think that. Yeah, like a piece of chocolate. Like Rocky's a man of peace. And I said, yeah, one piece at a time. Yeah, you're hungry. I get it. And you know what? It's 10:20. We've gone an hour and 20 minutes already. So I don't want to disappoint anybody. I'm not in a mood for reading today. And by mood, I mean, I don't feel like it. I don't mean that. I mean, my head is not in a good place for reading today. When I came on the show and I said, my brain is not awake, I can't do a good reading when my brain is like that. And it's still that way. I feel almost dizzy in my head. And so I'm in a bad place to do readings. I don't know if I haven't slept enough or what it is. But Brad, just in synchronicity. Good. A little slow on the uptake. Sleepy. Yeah. I don't know that I'm sleepy, but I don't know if I can do a good reading today or that I would be good for anybody today. I know I advertised the show. Well, I didn't advertise. I just put in there that we do readings and tarot and stuff. And today I don't know that I could do good tarot. I hope that you understand that if you came here to get, hopefully get a tarot reading, I apologize that I'm just not going to do them today because I don't think I'd do a good one. And of course, readings are not I don't deliver the message. I facilitate the message. I think it comes from somewhere else. So I could shuffle the cards and I could just say, here's what the cards say. But I don't feel I'm linking today with my brain. So yeah, I knew that, Brad. I knew that you meant you were sleepy. Yeah, that's how I'm feeling. I'm not feeling sleepy. My head is not right today. There's something dizzy behind my eyes, and I don't like that feeling when I feel that. So, foggy brain. Yeah, you too, Janice. Yeah, you get it. You know what I'm talking about. So I'm glad we can get on here and talk. And if you've noticed, I've just been rambling for an hour and 20 minutes, and that's all I do on Sunday mornings. I rarely come in here with an agenda. The shows during the week, Monday through Friday, I've got an agenda. I've set up what I'm going to say. I write down what I say, what I'm going to say. Now, I'm pretty good at speaking off from the hip. I read some things during the show on Monday through Friday. And so I come in prepared with an agenda. On Sunday mornings, it's just kind of open, just talking. So am I having a Joe moment? Are you talking to me, Steph? So take a break. Yeah, I supposedly took a break yesterday. So now I will tell you this. If my wife ends up taking the kids up to her grandma's, that's a break for me. It's not that I don't like being around my kids and I don't love my wife and kids. It's nice when they're gone for a day. And you're like, and there's quiet. I feel like I could go lay down and go back to sleep, but I slept from, when did I go to bed last night? I think I went to bed last night around 11:30. And yeah, I woke up a couple of times, but I got up and it was 8 o'clock. So what is that? That's I slept 7 hours, not solidly. And I woke up a couple of times. I woke up, and if I see there's any light outside the window, it could be 4:30 in the morning, and there's light already starting in the sky. And I get up usually. I'm up 4 to 5 o'clock every day. But this morning I let it ride, and I didn't get up until 8 o'clock. So, but my mind's still a little scattered. Yeah, listen to your body. A Joe moment. Are we talking about Joe Biden? Yeah, you know, and it's with all of us. The thing, you know, and it's like the hair on my legs. I love it when, you want to touch the hair on my legs and see, and I don't really shave them like I used to because, I'm getting a little older and my hairline is not what it used to be. And so, but then again, my wife would know that. And, she's a lot like my sister in that respect that, Cheerios for breakfast is helps your heart. Your heart. Come on, man. It's all about your heart. So there you go. Oh, that's why I feel bad for Joe Biden. I'm not angry about that. I'm angry at the Democrats that they are so stupid as to run him. Leave the man alone and let him retire. I feel bad for him. Like I said, I started mentioning when his son died, I think the fire went out of his belly. I think he was done then. And I felt very bad for him. So, I know that if I'd spent a lifetime in politics or in any job, and my son died, and I was rounding the end of my career, at the pinnacle of my career, I would probably lose a little fire in my belly too. So Joe should step away. He can't now. He's locked in. But he should step away unless there's some great savior comes along before the Democratic National Convention. But you know what the Democrats aren't? The stock market yesterday, I think, is an indicator. What they're not getting is what they want. They're not getting what they want. I don't think you're going to see a lockdown of the country last much longer. And for as bad as the rioting is that's been going on, it has proved to us one thing. Nobody abides by the lockdown. And if a riot can take place, if protesting can take place, which are two different things, if you can get thousands of people together to protest the death of a man at the hand of the cops, you can get thousands of people together to go back to work, to open up the country. So I think the premise of the coronavirus pandemic lockdown has really been disproven by the protests. That's my take on it. Intrepid Space Force unite. Yes, Susie Q, absolutely. They're taking advantage of an old man. Yeah, Brad Hart, I agree with you. They are taking advantage of an old man. How many of you have known elderly people who are in their dotage that you might say, hey, wouldn't you love to go do that thing again that you were the best at? Yeah, man, let's go do it. You can take advantage of an ailing mind very easily. And that's the sad thing about Joe Biden right now. Politics all out of the picture. I feel bad for Joe Biden. I really think he'd rather be doing something else. He'd probably rather be fishing. I know I would. I don't know. 77 isn't as elderly as it used to be in our culture, our society. Hell, I'm only 17 years away from 77. 17 years from now, I hope I'm still vital, virile, making babies. I'm kidding on that front. In 17 years, my wife will be 57, 58. So she better not be having babies. I don't think it would be good for her. So you get looks that you're old, KTM. KTM, you're kind of hot and young looking, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. So just saying, from a guy's point of view. Of course, I'm an old guy. What does my word mean? You know, that's what I hear. So, what did I say, Teresa? You're saying good grief, Scotty. What did I say? I don't have grandkids yet. I suppose that's coming soon. All depends on if my daughters start having kids or my son makes a kid. My 19-year-old son, which I hope he doesn't yet. So, projects you want to do, you guess you're old. KTM, you aren't old. I guarantee you with that. And you don't come across as old. So, Brad says, I have nothing against Joe personally. I think he'd be a cool guy to throw back a pint with and listen to stories about how none of this used to be here. Yeah, I think you're right. Haven't I said that, Brad? You remember me saying that about Obama during his years? I said, I disagree with his politics, but I'd throw back a couple of pints with him and arm wrestle him for the tab. I think he'd be a fun guy to talk to. I think he'd be interesting. Right now, I think it would be interesting to talk to Obama now. I'd love to interview him, but not now. I don't like what he's doing politically right now. I wouldn't trust much coming out of his mouth. as not being something that is driven by his ego or his need to maintain a legacy. That bothers me about him right now. Some of the things he's come out in the last few days and said, you're the former president, Barack. Shut up, sit down, have a beer. So, anyway, that's all I got to say. We've gone for an hour and a half. It's 10:30. Not going to do readings today. I'm sorry about that, folks, for any who might have been anticipating those. Not today. Not up to it. Send Joe some Scotty Rockets. Yeah, I would love to send him a Scotty. I'd love to send Trump a Scotty Rocket, too. There's some people I'd love to see with their lips wrapped around my rocket. So, those are going to be here this week, I think. Obama's one hell of a speaker. Yeah. He's got a lot of class, too. Man knew how to dress. Man knew how to speak. And I believe Obama was a classy dude. Still think he's got a lot of class. Don't like a lot of what comes out of his mouth, but he does it well. So, anyway, there it is. Barry, how you doing? I see Barry's in the room. How you doing, Barry? Didn't see you. Will come in. All right. The sound of that all right. The sound of that all right is like, okay, let's wrap it up. So, folks, I want to thank you for joining me here today on a Sunday morning when you could be doing other things. I appreciate your being here. The pauses, Matt says. And today, we're going to... He's worse than Captain Kirk. So, when it comes to dramatic pausing. Yes, lips around my rocket, Barry. KTM says, time for bed. I don't want to put those two things together. You been up all night, Kay? So, let's see. Is addressing the American people like he's still the POTUS. That's exactly it, Brad. That was classless. I agree. Obama still comes on as if he is still legitimately the president of the United States. And that's what's bothersome. That is why the ethics of having been a president, you notice most presidents in the past, when their term is done, they don't stay shit. They may come out later as senior statesmen and comment on things, but they don't go out in the very next administration and start making their viewpoints known. They pretty much keep out of things. That's the way it's done. Your time is over. So there it is. But apparently the left feels he needs to do that, so they legitimize it. So there you go. Okay. Let's leave it on that negative note, shall we? Positive. Folks, seek the peace narrative in yourself. We'll talk about that. I'm looking over at the chat room as I'm talking. That's why I'm looking off this way. Chat room runs from the top to the bottom on my screen, over on this side. So, I was just debating in my own mind whether to comment any further on this, and I don't think I will. So, got a rocket in your pocket. Stay off the juice, boy. That's what Teresa is commenting on. That's from West Side Story. So anyway, on that note, I'll see you tomorrow night. 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. West Coast time, right here for the Intrepid Radio program. And as you found out Friday, I don't know why I didn't think of this myself. It was Audrey that brought it up. Friday, when we were having the blockout problems with my show, we still have the chat room going, which, by the way, won't replay, as far as I know. And there's no chat room in the show that I put up to replace it. But we could listen over on Odyssey Radio, which I say all the time in the show. Come on over and listen to the show on Odyssey and come and join the chat room. And so that's what we did on Friday. So, but tomorrow night we'll be back. And yeah, Matt, we'll do that once my brain is. I got a song in my head that have you ever done this? I have woken up every morning this week, and Teresa, you know the song I'm talking about from Sunset Boulevard. And I wake up in the morning and it's already singing in my head. And I don't know why that song is in my head, but it's in my head. It's that one, what Sunset Boulevard is about. It's about the old silent film screen actress who's been brought up. And there's an old movie about this that was made, but Andrew Lloyd Webber did the musical. And she's brought up getting an opportunity to enter into the talkies years after her career was over. And she's talking to a reporter in this scene. And this song it's in my mind. It's been in my mind as I'm waking up. I'm laying in bed and it's in my mind playing, and I don't know why. But she sings that beautiful part of that song where she's telling them that when I was in the silent picture, she said, all it was one look. With one look, I could break your heart. I didn't need words, she said. It was the look. And she said, with one look, I could ignite a fire. With one look, I was the girl next door, and the next look, I was the woman that you longed for. And it's an awesome song. I posted it on my Facebook page. How does that go? She said, the song starts, she says, with one look, I could break your heart. And I don't remember the words, but I'm waking up and that's in my head. With one look, I could break your heart. And she goes into the song. And so it's neat. I don't know why that came into my mind, because Matt said something about singing. And someday we'll do that again. But I wake up and that song is singing in my head, and I sing it. I'm standing at the toilet, relieving myself from the night's buildup, and singing that song. With one look, I could break your heart. With one look, I'd play every part. And so anyway, you get the idea. But that's been in my head lately, and I don't know why. Yeah, and fantastic. Glenn Close did a fantastic job with that song. Hi, here's my other one.
Next
Rowan.
Sunday when you go to Rockies, what time will you go? Because Emily.
I don't know. We haven't planned that far ahead yet.
Emily might be able to babysit us.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Emily about doing that. But I'm on the radio right now, so we can talk about babysitting details for next Sunday.
I thought you
later.
were talking to your friend.
No, I am talking to my friends. That's all my radio people, see? There's 21 of them in there right now in the chat room. That was Rowan. Yeah, the old movie Sunset Boulevard. Fantastic. Yeah, it's different than guitar riffs. Yeah, I don't know which song. Yeah, that song. There are times I'd rather sing in a big voice, and there are times where I can sit down with a guitar and do my thing. So maybe some other time. But thank you for being here, folks. Thanks for, now I've extended the show another 9 minutes this morning from the last time I said I'm done for the day. So it's the Minnesota goodbye, the long goodbye. So we'll see you here tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. I appreciate that. And you guys go out and have a fun day now. long day ahead. It's going to be a warm one here, I hear. So, the long goodbye. So you have a fun day, and I'll talk to you all very soon. So there's my end stream button. So here I go. Live long and prosper, folks. You know how that is. Good night. Good day.